Picture this. You're hanging out in your local ocean, minding your own business, when all of a sudden you see this huge shape hurtling towards you out of the depths. It's dark, it's ominous, and it's moving at high speed straight for you. What do? Personally, I would probably panic and then get eaten by whatever the heck that was. But turns out that there's a chance you might have been able to survive this scenario if you happened to be around way back in 1620, because that was the year that the first submarine was invented. Yeah, really. Hi, I'm here and you're watching this channel. Today, we're exploring the history of submarines, from their very murky beginnings to the modern nuclear subs that are prowling the seas even as we speak. So let's just dive right into it. Okay. So who invented the first submarine, and why? Well, the first submarine was invented by a Dutch inventor named Cornelius van Drabel, and he invented it to do battle with the Spanish. See, Van Drabel lived in a time when naval battles were primarily fought with large sailing ships that were propelled by wind, and these ships were primarily used for transporting goods and passengers during calmer times, but could be outfitted with cannons and used for battle. The downside of this system was that if the wind wasn't at your back, you couldn't really attack. You had no way of propelling yourself towards the enemy without tipping off that you were coming. And that meant that naval warfare was mostly just two ships sitting around for hours and hours firing blindly at each other, hoping to get lucky. This led to an extremely low success rate in terms of sinking enemy ships, and also meant that any sailors unfortunate enough to be part of the rigging had nothing to do but wait and hope they didn't get shot. Van Drabel thought there had to be a better way, and his solution was a radical one: go underwater. Now, whether or not the submarine could actually work was debatable, but the Turtle was definitely the cutest submarine design ever, and possibly one of the cutest vehicles ever. Okay, so the submarine that Vanderbilt designed was called the Turtle, and it kind of looked like a giant sea turtle, hence the name. And it was made of wood with a single deck and a conning tower on top. And it was powered by a single paddle wheel that was turned by a hand crank. And yes, it was equipped with a small cannon that could be shot while submerged. And you're probably thinking that sounds pretty slow and cumbersome, and it was. But the real innovation here was the idea that the ship could move independently under its own power without relying on wind. And more importantly, it could sneak up on enemy ships undetected. So was it successful? Well, unfortunately, it kind of wasn't. During its first test off the coast of France, the crew struggled to submerge the vessel, and when they finally did, they found it extremely difficult to maneuver, and it kept accidentally surfacing. And when they attempted to fire the cannon, they realized that the recoil from the gun was too powerful and threatened to crack the vessel. So they quickly abandoned the idea of firing underwater and instead loaded the cannon with a bunch of rocks and then heaved them directly into the sea. So the very first shots fired from a submarine were rocks. Anyway, after realizing how dangerous and impractical the submarine was, Van Drabel took it off for a ride in the English Channel, where it successfully managed to submerge itself, but only for about half an hour before the crew once again decided that this was a bad idea. So they surfaced and sailed the rest of the way back to shore. Still, the English were impressed enough to order 20 more submarine vessels and set them loose on the Spanish. Except, and here's the thing, they weren't exactly the most effective weapons ever unleashed on the Spanish. According to reports, the English sent the submarines out in 14 separate missions between 1621 and 1623, and none of them were ever sighted by the enemy. That's right. The English were never able to successfully sneak up on the Spanish, largely due to the fact that the submarines were extremely noisy and emitted lots of air bubbles upon submerging themselves, giving away their position before they could get close. In the end, the project was scrapped, and the submarine was abandoned until the American Revolutionary War. But that's it for this video. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave me a comment with some ideas for future videos you'd like to see. And as always, thanks for watching.